Hi, I'm David Petersen.
I'm Jesse Glenn,
And this is the Plotmasters Project.
a video podcast of two artists looking back,
and revisiting their earliest characters and stories.
this time, Claw.
Season finale of Plotmasters, Season 1.
We finally made it.
And we are right back where we started in some ways. It's a Cats Trio revisit of the villain Claw.
Yeah.
Let's start off by, if you're not familiar with the Plotmasters Project, you can check out all the previous episodes at theplotmasters.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Our very first episode, Jesse, of Plotmasters was Cats Trio.
Mm-hmm.
Which
was a fun project that was like the first thing that David and I worked on together.
Yeah.
So it was a good place to start with.
Yeah, it was, and in some ways, it was, I think that of all the things we ever worked on, I feel like it's the one that was always the most meaningful to us. It's our origin of working together.
Yeah.
It's us.
Yeah, it is where we started. It's also, and we both have a tendency to, when we're creating stories, base characters off of ourselves and our friends. And we do that together, and we've done that separately. This is one of those first ones where the characters are based off of us. And where some of the later ones, it's like, this character sort of represents like the relationship between these people or their personalities, sort of, whereas with the cats, it's more like, this is us. This is me. This one's mine. It's a bit more personal in that way.
Well, and if folks want to go back and watch that episode of Cats Trio, just to remind you, this was kind of our Ninja Turtles homage. It was all the things we loved about Ninja Turtles, but done slightly differently with 3 cats. And originally it was just 3 cats, but by the time that it was originally conceived by my friend Mike Davis. He's the one that's wearing the kind of olive drab clothes in both Jesse's version here and my version. He's the blonde cat with the olive drab stuff. Mike came up with these characters and kind of handed them off to me. Felt like I could do more with them than he could. And then by the time that Jesse and I were hanging out and drawing together, I handed it off to Jesse. I'm like, you're the one who should be drawing this, not me. This is going to be better in your hands, but you need a character in here. And it was like, well, do you become a cat? Or like, do we make up a cat character for you? Or do you want to bring in some other representation of you? And so you brought in a Ninja Turtles role-playing game character that was a mutant raccoon.
Yep.
So yeah, if you want to find out more about the Cats Trio episodes, you can go back and watch those, or watch that one on the plotmasters.com website. I don't think we should completely rehash that, but I'll say that there was stuff that we didn't get to in our initial episode of Plotmasters. There was stuff that we just didn't share.
Because over the years, I mean, we worked on this for many, many years, passing it back and forth multiple times, or just taking it up on our own here and there,
and taking breaks in between. Letting it sit for a year or two, and then coming back.
So there are things that were added, things that were taken away, things were adapted from other things. So we have more content to show you.
One of which is Frank Cat. In addition to Dave, Mike, and Nick Cat, as they were originally named, there was one based on a friend of ours named Frank. Jesse drew the original version. Unfortunately, I don't think we found any old art of Frank Cat.
I don't think so.
So some of the things that we're going to show you, at least the next 2, this one and the next one, are updates that I did in 2018 where I was considering that we might do some mini episodes. So I did kind of a redraw of Frank from Cats Trio, but Jesse drew the original version, and he was more of a spotted cat. He had a spot over one eye, and I think his ears were different color than his head, than his like main fur color, which was different than all the other cats. All the other cats were pretty uniform in tone. And Frank was a friend of mine. I had known Frank since 2nd grade, and Nick, who was one of the other cats, was a neighbor of Frank. Frank lived 2 doors down, and they knew each other since they were very, very little. And I think every friend group has someone, or has these kind of relationships where you can be friends with someone where you're really close, and then you can end up becoming enemies for like 2 weeks, and then you make up. And it's, I mean, I think the way what we'd call it now would be like a toxic relationship. I think that's a little dramatic for what was going on. I don't think it was toxic, but it was just that kind of friendship that was always going up and down and up and down. And whether that was with, between me and Frank, or between Nick and Frank, Mike and Frank almost never actually got along. They never really warmed up to each other. In real life, the real human beings. But there was a point where, when we were on good terms with Frank, we said, hey, we'll make a side character with, Frank will be in here. And by the time we actually started developing stuff, we were on the outs with Frank. And so he became a villain character.
Yeah. Like when I was first meeting you guys, early in the Boy Scouts, I was an older scout, David and Frank were younger scouts, and they would set each other off all the time, running around, chasing each other, just disrupting things and kicking balls and cans and this and that, and kicking each other's butts.
Just kicking each other. Yeah.
Kicking each other. And like, stop, slow down, stop. That's just who they were. But yeah, so yeah, he was kind of a divisive figure in our Cats universe. Not necessarily an enemy, but problem.
Well, he was, so at first he was going to be I think he was just like one of the brothers originally. He was just going to be there, and almost like a long lost brother. But then we eventually wrote in that when he appears, the cats almost think of him, because the cats mutate from being small strays that kind of got caught in the crossfire of an explosion, and then therefore mutate because of whatever they're exposed to. And that back when they were honest to goodness cats, on 4 legs cats, that this one was one of the ones that was in the alley with them, that they knew in that way. But now that they have all spent some the 3 main the Cats trio had spent time as human cats, so to speak, growing up together, as it were, for some time between the explosion and when they meet Max the raccoon, that Frank isn't with them. So when they meet Frank, it was like hey, it's Frank. He was, from the alley, but they don't know him as a human cat, as a mutant cat. And that was the twist. That was the reveal, was that he was actually a bad guy. He was working with Claw, with the bad guy, which we'll get to, by the way. At least that's my memory. I remember there was a whole locked up in a cage scene kind of a thing where they thought like, oh, Frank, he's going to let us out. And then Frank's like, I'm with this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just went a different path.
Yeah.
He didn't escape the same way the other cats did. He, either got caught by the development corporation, or just was on his own in a different way for a while. And
yeah. And I think, like you mentioned, that some of these characters, at different times during Plotmasters things, represented us very literally, and other times they were a starting point and then became their own character. I actually think, even though we were mad at Frank at some point where we went, now he's a villain character, I don't think anything about what we wrote about the Frank cat character really had anything to do with Frank.
No,
beyond that, it wasn't. Frank in real life wasn't a villain. We were angry with him as children and went, yeah, now the character that has your name's a bad guy. And it became all about story and not about Frank. Another character, again, a redesign that I did in 2018. We do have one drawing of this character, which we'll get to a little later on. And this is a rat character that we referred to as 001.
He was the initial experiment by this lab. He was the lab rat. It kind of just made sense to have that be the first one. There, like Dave said, there's only one drawing of it. It was at a time when I was rethinking the way I was drawing the cats. I was changing my stylization a bit, and I just was thinking of other things to do. And I wanted, it's like we had talked about how the cats came to be. There was a lab, there was an explosion at the lab, but it wasn't the cat's mutations were just random from some chemical that we don't know about. It's the lab was actually doing experiments to mutate animals. And this was part of that experiment. This rat was one of them, and Max the raccoon was not. No, he wasn't one of them. Was he one of them?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the idea was that
he's one of them.
The idea that is, if you're using these critters for maybe some kind of military purposes or something like that, or you want them to go do jobs because they're just animals. You want them to go do jobs that human life is too valuable for. Obviously, lab rat, you start with something small. And then, okay, we're going to work our way up a little. And we decided that Max or Jesse, depending on which way we called him, the raccoon was like the second one of those.
Yeah.
And that then the main villain, who we're going to get to, is the third. And that's a mountain lion. And so it's a totally
very, very incremental steps. Rat, raccoon, mountain lion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's logical.
Yeah, it makes sense. Total sense. When I did my quick redesign of 001, 001 is almost your spy. He's the animal that if you wanted to just send in and have place a beacon somewhere or get photos of secret blueprints, that's something that he could handle. So I very much tried to draw him in that vein. Another character, and this is all Jesse is gonna have. Jesse has to explain the next part.
Okay, so this is Tabitha. She was a weasel. She was also in the experimental lab. She, as I recall, I actually made a Ninja Turtles character, role-playing character for her as well. I mean, this was in my early days of trying to draw women that look right, and so she's a little weird looking with her crazy mouth and lipstick and eyeshadow.
I mean, you can see, Jim Lee X-Men era.
Yeah,
kind of stuff on the body, and then somehow that mixes also with an anthropomorphic character, but she's wearing makeup, and she also has like human hair, but is a weasel, but has has breasts, but also it's like it's all over the place, but it's hard to do those characters to make.
I could do that now.
Sure.
Next, I need to do a revamp of Tabitha and make that work.
We can do mini episodes. We can do as many episodes as you want.
We could. But I did like her as a character. I mean, she was very tough and very sneaky. I mean, you can see in there she's kind of just she won't back. She's an I won't back down kind of a brawler weasel.
So let's talk about if you were going to redesign. Well, do you want to save this for a mini episode, or do you want to move on? I mean, save this for a mini episode and move on.
We could. I mean, because this is about Claw. We're doing Claw today.
That's true. Okay.
And we did talk about Frank. We talked about 001.
Okay, let's save her for.
We can actually maybe do that.
I've already talked to Jesse.
Something.
I have ideas for a Tabitha redesign, and they're fun too, right? They're fun.
It's actually
It's really fun,
cool
and it's very different than I know what you would come up with, which I think is it's good content for a mini episode. So let's save those details for another time.
All right.
And let's start talking about villains, because we do have a random drawing. And this drawing that I'm about to go to, this drawing happened after we already had established Claw as a villain. And in getting the drawing out and scanning it and going through the archives and talking with Jesse about it, we were like, who is this?
Yeah.
Who is this? Is this just another, is this just Claw? Like a different drawing of Claw, like a different take on him? Is this some other character entirely? And neither one of us could really figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
But in the spirit of Plotmasters, we're sharing it.
Yeah. Thinking about it now, it may have been influenced by some X-Men comics I had when Storm, she got turned into a kid and she was in Egypt, I think, and there was something going on with the Shadow King. So I think might be why he has that fez kind of hat and the robes. I may have been leaning towards some of those design elements when I was drawing that. I'm not sure. I don't know. But yeah, it's just this weird character that we never did anything else with. This is the only drawing. He didn't really have a story or a background or a motivation. He was just evil and tearing up bodies, I guess.
I mean,
Yeah.
for years, I actually kind of thought it was just an alternate version of Claw. Like, let's maybe redesign him for a second, and no, let's stay back with the original,
Yeah.
the original version. An interesting note on this piece is that this was drawn by Jesse, but it is inked by Jesse's sister Anne.
Yeah, you see the little AG down at the bottom right of the signature there. Yeah, my sister is an artist, not all the time. She can draw, she can paint a bit. You know, she's talented. She's got her degree in chemical engineering, and she works for a plastics company. So I mean, she's not a working.
She's not pursuing it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a for fun thing, and yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of think back about Anne inking that piece for you. Here is Claw. This is the first drawing of Claw, and I inked this. Was that the first time anybody had ever inked your pencils? Was when I inked Claw?
Probably. There may have been some sketches or doodles in a sketch pad somewhere that we just don't have anymore.
But this would have been so early on in the cat's development.
Yeah.
I can't imagine I would have inked something before this.
And no one else would have. No one else would have.
So what that brings me to with the Anne piece is, were you trying to replace me?
Maybe.
Were you like,
no.
What if I get my sister to ink me? Then I don't need him.
Maybe she'll do it better than Dave.
Well, she did do a better job. We mentioned Claw in the previous episode with Cat's Trio, and that he was our big villain. He was our big bad. And that he was... this was not Ninja Turtles. This was Cat's Trio. And one of the defining ways that you can tell that it was truly original and different than Turtles was that our villain wasn't Shredder. He was Claw.
So much different. He's not covered in spikes and shreddy bits, but he's got spiky claws, a spiky helmet, and a dual long Wolverine claw thing on his arm. Yeah.
So this drawing, I think I very clearly remember you drawing in response to the Jim Lee X-Men #1 covers, you linked up covers. In fact, we even think that maybe some of the pose was inspired by Wolverine. And then you penciled this.
Yeah.
And then I inked it, and you were over, and we were drawing together. My dad knew that Jesse and I are working on this comic, and my dad brought out some of his old drafting supplies. He brought out these pens, these little like almost cups that had like a technical pen needle that went down inside. It gives you a very, very uniform pen line. It does not allow for any kind of line weight or expression. I inked this piece all with that pen. So not only inking someone who was much better than me in Jesse's drawing, but inking with a brand new pen I had never used before. So it's not my best inks even for the time. But I remember us still being pretty pleased with it.
Yeah.
This piece was then photocopied, and then we did not have access to colored markers at the time. Because this would have been when I was a freshman in high school, and I don't think we started playing with markers until I was about a senior in high school, maybe even in first year of college. So this was definitely colored later in marker. And Jesse and I have both looked over this thing, and we're trying to figure out who colored it, and neither one of us can figure out who colored this. There are only a handful of images of Claw. This one, unfortunately, has a really nasty seam, and that's because it's on a very large sheet of drawing paper that had been folded over and over and over. But here we've got all three cats fighting Claw, and then a very kind of quickly cartooned in Max, the raccoon,
Very cartoon,
kind of barber shearing off the tail. And this is all Jesse. These are Jesse's drawings from around the same time that the first one was done.
Who are those guys?
4 turtles and a little Splinter. In addition, and Jesse and I think, only really noticed this last night. Yeah, when we were going through the slides.
Yeah.
Here's another cat and a hand. This may be the only surviving drawing from back when we started working on Plotmaster stuff in like 1991
Mm-hmm.
of Frank Cat. That
Yeah.
might be the only drawing of Frank Cat that still is left.
That's the only true reference to Frank.
There's one other image of Claw, and it's in a flashback, but we didn't actually get to him within the pages of the comic.
So the most you get out of Claw is his claws.
And then there was a point in 1996 where Jesse and I thought seriously about relaunching Cat's Trio, and Jesse had kind of changed the way he was drawing. It was definitely influenced by more like manga, anime, Robotech looking stuff, and we showed some of these during the initial episode.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 heads of Claw, and for reference, also Max, who is 002, and the rat 001.
You know, I was changing how I was drawing things. This would be likely the first drawing of the rat 001.
In Cat's Trio, there was this research with the idea of mutating animals to replace certain human jobs, especially dangerous human jobs, probably with military significance, like 001 as a spy. And if that was true, then Claw was the tank. He was the biggest. He was the fighting model. He was going to be the military person. You know, he was. This is who they would send into war. So that's all we have from the old Plotmasters catalog.
Every good hero needs a good villain.
This is my redesign, and I did mine kind of like a cover of the issue. It has the same exact logo placement as my original Cat's Trio piece that I did for the redesign of the first episode of Plotmasters. And I almost thought, like, if this is issue 1 of the story arc, then the Claw issue is issue 4. This is when everything has gone to hell. But I decided to play into that total idea of him being military, that he is an army soldier. He is meant to go do terrible things, intervening in foreign countries to make the world a safer place, but in essence are also making children orphans and just leveling places to rubble, and you know, all that horrible stuff was, I thought, a really good setting for our villain. So I played up all the military stuff for the design. I looked at military clothing and military gear and body armor, a little digital paint job on the pants to give some like camouflage pant look. I also came up with a way that claw brace thing made more sense. You know, leather straps and bracing and rivets and things to keep it all held together. I gave him an insignia on his shoulder pad that brought up the idea of some alliances, that you belong to a certain club, and that maybe that symbol has not so great connections, like a secret symbol that's maybe a little vile.
Sure, he's not just a Grail Knight.
A Grail Knight. Well, I wanted something that kind of evoked lesser known emblems that you would find on an SS officer's uniform. Some of the visuals could look cool in a way where if you didn't know your history, could be a dog whistle symbol. And I wanted something that looked a little ominous. I think actually in some ways questing for the Grail could be a little ominous.
Sure.
But the cross there was actually inspired by the idea of looking at the iconography of the Iron Cross of the Nazis, but then putting it in some other symbol, an icon and a shield, chevron, that felt cultish, felt like knowing this symbol or seeing this symbol on a door probably means you should stay the hell out of going through that door, unless you're Claw. I gave him a dent on his helmet, and lots of pads and pouches without going to kind of Rob Liefeld territory, but making it feel very, very military. There's a close-up of the claw. And then, yes, I added 03 as a reference to his order of being created to the knee pads. That's my version. His job is to hunt down the cats because they are mistakes. They are not supposed to exist. They are accidents that are liabilities for the people who made him and the people who continue to pay him and allow him to go do all the horrible things he does.
One of the design elements I like of yours is in the helmet. Also evokes sort of a evil, almost Nazi feel. It's like the style of the spikes. Like if you just had like the one spike on top with the black helmet, it's like it looks like that kind of
That's true.
spiked helmet. You just have more of them. Yeah.
All right, so Jesse has a redesign for us as well.
Yeah. So mine, I went a little different. Thinking of, like Dave explained it, the smaller animals were the sneakier animals, and Claw being the bigger animal was more of the tank, more of the combat soldier. I kind of pulled him back a bit from that, thinking, if there was a brute, if there was a tank, why not grab a savannah lion or a tiger or a bear or something big, you know, but still make him like the medium-sized fighter. So maybe or the stealth fighter or just something like that. So I pulled him back into more of a sleek outfit, which is kind of a throwback to design that I had in Max right there. So he's got more of a sleek top with that red striping, and I wanted to see if I could put him in something like that. I got rid of the his old style green that he had been in, and put him in this as if it was a uniform. Like this is just what they all kind of wore. Gave him a nice, sleek looking wrist claw, and I gave him a sword, just so he was a close up fighter and more of a quick, sleek, nimble brawler. So not necessarily a infiltrator like the rat or the raccoon would be, but still, he's not a frontline soldier. He's not a grunt. So that's kind of where I went with mine, doing things a little differently.
Yeah, I was worried about the slimming him down, because that was like the idea that when you've got three kids, it's like with Magneto, right? You need a character that when all the X-Men assemble, and when they have to face Magneto should be able to maybe keep them all at bay. Like that needs to be a fight that we don't know the outcome of. And so if you slim, I was worried like, if you slim down Claw, man, even though the cats are untrained, three cats plus the raccoon, they're going to be able to take this guy. But yeah, I think there's an authority that's in that suit. That's like you don't wear that suit unless you can get away with wearing that suit, right? Like you,
yeah,
you have been trained to be some kind of a martial arts or killing machine, and then that sword I think is the other thing. Even though it's also sheathed, which is interesting. Like we don't really see the sword. But man, that sword is huge, and the idea of him just like a panel where he's just swiping and clearing the whole, the room or the field or the whatever where all the cats are. Like, yeah, he can totally keep all three cats and Max at bay.
Yeah,
even though
absolutely.
you've lost all, like you've taken away all that bulk. Like it's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean, he's still got the strength, he's still got the muscle, and he looks like he can move.
Yeah,
He can
he's
still
fast.
hurt you a lot.
Yeah. My guy looks plodding, especially with all the gear, all the gear I loaded him down with. This guy's just he's on you faster than you can think about dodging. He's already on you.
Yep.
I assume
I didn't use any.
I was gonna say, I assume it's the lab in the background. It's the setting is the lab or whatever organization he's still with.
Basically, yeah. I took a long time trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the background, and I had drawn a few things and I didn't like them. So I just had a blank kind of dark mottled color thing going, and I just started grabbing actually the marquee tool and started just drawing points and selections and just cutting in just shapes, just flat color shapes, and that upper corner of the door where it starts small, gets big, and then comes down. I actually had it small to big to small, and it was just this small shape, and it looked like the light bleeding through the opening of the door, and that's when that kind of caught my eye. So I opened it up all the way to the floor, put a window in, kind of just I don't know. It was just like shape exploration that got me to what that is, and then having the light bleed out of the door led me to like, oh, let's maybe see if there's like have some fog in the room and have this light source kind of like shining at him, and you can see that where he's cutting through the dark and the light, and so it's just like it wasn't necessarily planned. Well, I did have it planned to being the lab, but I was drawing like either vats or containers or cages or something like that, and it just wasn't working for me. So I wasn't going necessarily for the lab in this, even though that's initially what I started him in, but it worked. So that's what.
For your Cats Trio piece, you didn't do a logo.
No.
So you decided to do a completely new logo treatment, like from scratch this time.
Yeah.
It's a cool logo, the way it goes vertically, and that letter style. Was that a font at all, or did you completely draw that by hand?
I drew that by hand. I set that inside of a selection rectangle, so I couldn't draw outside of it. Just with a brush, I was just drawing the lines on. So you can see like the sides are pretty crisp, and everything else I just started painting in the shape, and then I'd carve some back out,
Mm-hmm.
to clean it up a little bit. And then I actually kind of went in and intentionally left some marks, like I'd put a little bit more color on and then erase some away, leaving little
Yeah,
bits and chunks.
there's almost like a woodblock print quality,
Yep.
or a linoblock print quality to some of those little stray bits that end up printing when you don't mean them to, but
Yep.
like stylistically,
Yep. Oh,
it's
yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was all a conscious choice. It was, yeah, done by hand, not a font.
very cool. Well, that is Cat's Trio Claw. Thank you very much for watching. As Jesse and I redesigned our main villain from Cat's Trio. The very first project we ever worked on together, and this ends season 1. We hope to do more Plotmasters as time allows in the future. We have at least 3 more seasons planned.
Yep.
Or we have content at least for 3 more seasons to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, the Plotmasters project is just a way for us to have fun, getting to revisit those old characters. It's an exercise in editing. It's an exercise in nostalgia. Neither Jesse or I have any active plans to be working on any of these things. They're just for fun to share with you guys.
Mm-hmm. Don't look for it on your newsstands anytime soon.
Right. There aren't plans to have these things happening. And that's going to round out season 1. We hope to see you guys with more of season 2 before the too distant future. Thank you for watching.
Thank you very much.